They called Earth a minor species. She opened her hand and revealed their radiation threshold. High Arbiter Thrazik of the Vorn Ascendancy leaned down from his elevated bench and spoke 3 words that ended 11.2 billion futures. Humanity, minor species. The chamber of the Galactic Concord had 847 seats. 9 of them were empty species the Vorn had assimilated or exterminated. The ceiling arched 217 meters above the sunken floor, a circular pit 3 meters below the main dais where petitioning species stood to beg. Amira Voss stood there now. She was 68 years old. She had baked sourdough that morning from her grandmother's starter, dated 1941. 2 slices sat in her jacket pocket, wrapped in wax paper. The rest of the chamber laughed. 2,341 delegates from 147 allied systems. Recording drones transmitted to 900 billion beings across the galaxy. The laughter echoed off obsidian walls, bounced off the 9 empty thrones, landed on the sunken floor where Amira stood alone. She finished her tea, set the porcelain cup down on the polished marble. The click echoed through 217 meters of stunned silence, louder than any speech she could have given. The hairline crack in the cup, from a fall 19 years ago, caught the light. The laughter stopped. No warning, no declaration, no mercy. Amira smiled. Stay close. 37 years earlier, Observer Quorum of the Hissith had watched the Vorn mining fleet descend on her homeworld. She had been 275 years old then, old enough to remember when her species numbered 12 million, young enough to survive the 90 years of slow extinction that followed. Now she sat in the observer's gallery of the Galactic Concord, her crystalline facets rotating 11 degrees, her body's way of processing information it did not want to believe. Beside her, Elder Nuara, one of 6 remaining elders of the Hissith, had not moved in 17 minutes. They don't know what she carries, Nuara whispered. Observer Quorum's subsonic hum, always present at 32 Hz when she was anxious, deepened. The human diplomat on the sunken floor, Dr. Amira Voss, 68 years old, grandmother of 3, former xenobiologist, reached into her jacket pocket. The gallery tensed. She pulled out a data crystal, 3 centimeters wide, unremarkable. High Arbiter, Amira said. Her voice carried through the chamber without a microphone. The acoustics of the sunken floor were designed to amplify the voices of the powerless. You asked for our military capacity, our FTL capability, our population numbers. She held up the crystal. You never asked for this. Before the chamber session, at 400 ship time, Amira had baked bread. Her grandmother's starter, brought from Earth in a sealed container on the first human diplomatic vessel 40 years ago. Flour dusted her collar. The sourdough scent filled the diplomatic ship's small kitchen. Dr. James Oduya, 71 years old, radiation specialist, tapped his left thumb against his thigh, his tell, and watched her knead. Bread at 4 in the morning, he said. Priorities, Amira said. She had brought 3 slices wrapped in wax paper. Ate 1 in the transport to the Concord. The other 2 sat in her jacket pocket, next to a radiation counter and a photograph of her daughter's 11th birthday. James had laughed. Bread first, diplomacy second. That was 37 minutes before she stood on the sunken floor. High Arbiter Thrazik's voice ground down from the elevated bench. 12 feet of obsidian black chitin, 7 limbs, compound eyes that reflected red under the chamber's lights. A grooming scar on his left thorax, from a failed assassination 200 years ago, pulsed purple when he spoke. You have 3 standard cycles to vacate 4 planets. Amira raised her hand. May I speak? The chamber laughed again. Thrazik's mandibles clicked, the rhythmic pattern Vorn used when lying. You have 11 minutes, make them entertaining. Amira pressed the crystal. A holographic projection bloomed 11 meters wide. The interior of a Vorn cruiser 19 years ago, a human volunteer in a radiation suit holding a counter. The numbers climbed, gray to yellow to red. The Vorn radiation tolerance is 4,700 rems acute, Amira said. Human tolerance is 650 rems. She stepped forward. We are weaker, you were right. Observer Quorum's facets had stopped rotating. In the gallery, the delegates from 12 overlooked species. The Hissith, the Vel, the Tikrai, the Melani, the Il, the Zan, the Orin, the S-Sathak, the Peter, the Ka, the Brinth, and the Zo leaned forward. All had been crushed by Tier 1 civilizations. All had come to watch the human. Elder Nuara's crystalline body produced a silica tear. It rolled down her facet and crystallized on her shoulder. She's going to do it, Nuara whispered. The Vorn delegation on the main dais did not understand what they were watching. High Arbiter Thrazik's mandibles had stopped clicking. But we measured something you didn't, Amira said. The holographic display shifted. A map of Vorn space. 47 colony worlds, each marked with a radiation reading. Your 47 colonies. The ones you built on neutron star remnants. The ones you told the Council were safe, emit background radiation of 4,900 rems per standard year. She let that land. The chamber went quiet, not the respectful quiet of listeners. The stunned quiet of a room that has just realized it might be on the wrong side of history. You have been slowly dying for 312 years, since your great migration. Project Silent Spindle had taken 37 years. 119 volunteers from 9 human nations. 3,872 independent measurements across 14 star systems. 11,403 pages of data. 11 names on brass plaques. Captain Elias Torres, now 52 years old, standing in the gallery, 2 benign tumors removed from his exposure at age 33, placed his hand on the wall of the diplomatic ship that morning. The plaques lined the corridor. Each had a date, a radiation level, and a single word. Measured. They knew, he had told Amira before the session. They volunteered anyway. She had nodded, poured tea from the cup with the hairline crack, handed it to him. Today we finish it, she said. On the sunken floor, Amira Voss had 9 minutes left of her speaking time. She had not raised her voice once. That's the thing about measurement, she said, addressing the entire chamber now, not just the Vorn, all 847 species. You think we're weak because we die at 650 rems, but we measured your death at 4,900 rems per year. We measured your fertility dropping, your lifespan halving. She walked closer to the Vorn delegation, 12 feet away now, close enough to see the individual facets of Thrazik's compound eyes. You blamed your genetics. You blamed the Hissith for your mining accidents. You blamed anyone except the rocks you chose to live on. Thrazik's chitin cracked again, louder this time. A visible fissure ran down his left forearm. We measured what you refused to measure, Amira said, because you thought asking the question would make you look weak. She stopped walking, but asking the question is the only thing that saves you now. Observer Quorum's 32, HZ hum, vibrated through the gallery. She understood now. The human woman was not begging, had never been begging. The tea, the bread, the photograph in her pocket, the flower on her collar, all of it was armor, not the kind that stopped bullets. The kind that reminded you who you were fighting for. She's showing them, Observer Quorum whispered to Nuara. Showing them what careful looks like. Nuara's silica tear had crystallized completely. She did not brush it off. Careful, Nuara repeated. Yes. On the floor below, Amira pressed the crystal again. The holographic display changed. A timeline. 312 years of Vorn ascendancy history, migration from their original homeworld, colony establishment, and alongside it a graph, fertility rates, lifespan averages. Both lines curved down. Your own records show it, Amira said. You just never connected the dots, because connecting the dots would have meant admitting you built your empire on ground that was killing you. She turned to face the entire chamber. The Vorn ascendancy will collapse within 11 generations, unless you treat with species who understand radiation shielding. Thrazik's mandibles clicked, not the lying pattern this time, something else. Something his own species hadn't heard in 300 years. The pattern for we are dying. Lei Wei in the gallery watched her Vorn-manufactured watch tick. 11 years undercover. 11 years of pretending to be someone else. 11 years of counting the days until this moment. She pressed the second key. 11,403 pages, public access. Every species in the Conquered could read them. The volunteers, the measurements, the 11 names. Read it, Amira said. Every word, then tell me again that humanity is minor. She reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out the bread, took a bite. The crunch echoed through 217 meters of absolute silence. High Arbiter Thrazik stood. His 7 limbs trembled. The chitin on his chest, the ceremonial breastplate made from his predecessor's carapace, a tradition 11 generations old, vibrated with his stress response. No species, he said, has ever spoken to the Vorn ascendancy this way. Amira chewed, swallowed. Then maybe you needed to hear it. You are one woman, Thrazik said, on a platform designed for beggars with bread in your pocket and a cracked teacup. Amira nodded. And you're dying, we measured it, we can fix it, that's the difference between us. She took another bite. You saw weakness and took. We saw weakness and asked, how do we make it strong? The recording drone's red light pulsed. 900 billion beings watched a 12-foot chitinous arbiter stand frozen, his mandibles half open, his chitin cracked in two places, facing a 68-year-old human woman who was eating bread in his presence. "What," Thrazik said, "do you require? Not what do you want, not a demand, a question. The first time in recorded Vorn history that an arbiter had asked a minor species what they required." Amira finished chewing, wiped a crumb from her lip with the back of her hand. "Protected status, resource rights, and seats, 47 of them, on every governing body you currently deny us. The Council will never—" "The Council," Amira said, "will vote however the Vorn vote. Everyone knows that, so here's your choice. You can keep dying, silently, slowly, for 11 more generations, or you can admit you need help and ask for it." She held up the bread. "Help looks like this, by the way. Careful, precise. Made from starter that's been alive for 85 years. We don't give up on things that matter." Observer Quorum's hum shifted. The 32HZ frequency, the one she had carried since the Vorn came, since the mining ships descended, since her mother's facet went dark, it changed. Not to silence, to something else. Nuara heard it. "What was that?" the elder asked. Observer Quorum did not answer. She did not have words for what she felt. Only the hum, and the hum was different now. On the sunken floor, Thrazik's mandibles clicked once. The submission pattern. Every Vorn in the chamber recognized it. Every delegate from every species that had ever been crushed by Vorn military power recognized it. "What you're asking," Thrazik said, "will change the balance of power in the conquered." Amira nodded. "That's the idea. You're not asking for equality, you're asking for dominance." "No," Amira said. "We're asking for a seat at the table, the same table you've been sitting at alone for 800 years. We're not asking you to leave, we're asking you to make room." She put the bread back in her jacket pocket. "Can you build the shields?" Thrazik asked. His voice cracked on the last word. The recording drone caught it. 900 billion beings heard a Vorn arbiter's voice crack. Amira smiled. "We can, but first you will apologize to the Hissith, in public on this floor. For 90 years of mining, their homeworld into dust." Observer Quorum's hum stopped, then started again, louder. The 32HZ frequency filled the gallery. Crystalline delegates from a dozen species turned to look at her. She did not care. She was watching the Vorn arbiter's mandibles click the submission pattern again. "Yes," Thrazik said. "One word." 900 billion beings heard it. The chamber did not erupt. It did not cheer. 2,341 delegates sat in absolute silence for 11 seconds, an eternity in diplomatic terms, and then, one by one, the 12 overlooked species in the gallery began to hum. The Hissith, the Vel, the Tikrai, the Melani, the Il, the Zan, the Orin, the S-Sathak, the Piter, the Ka, the Brinth, the Zo. Each in their own frequency. The sound filled the 217-meter chamber like a choir that had been waiting 312 years to sing. Amira Voss stood on the sunken floor, flowers still dusted on her collar, a photograph of her daughter in her pocket, 2 slices of bread wrapped in wax paper, 37 years of data glowing in the archive behind her. She did not shout, did not threaten, did not gloat. She poured herself another cup of tea from the cup with the hairline crack. The click echoed, and this time no one laughed. The chamber held its breath. Not a metaphor, the air itself seemed to stop moving. 2,341 delegates frozen. 900 billion beings watching through recording drones frozen. Even the Vorn delegation, for the first time in 800 years, had nothing to say. Amira Voss poured herself another cup of tea. The hairline crack in the porcelain caught the light again. She lifted the cup, took a slow sip, and waited. The click of the cup returning to the saucer echoed through the sunken floor. "I asked you a question," she said. "Can you build the shields?" Thrazik's mandibles clicked once. The submission pattern. He had used it twice now. His chitin had cracked in 3 places. His 7 limbs had stopped trembling, not because he was calm, but because he had exhausted his body's ability to show stress. "We can," he said. "Then do it." Observer Quorum's hum had not stopped. The 32HZ frequency vibrated through the gallery, through the crystalline bodies of the other Hissith delegates, through the stone floor beneath her feet. She had been humming this frequency for 90 years, since the mining ships came, since her mother's facet went dark. She had never expected it to change, but something was different now. The human woman on the floor below, flower on her collar, bread in her pocket, cracked teacup in her hand, had done something the Vorn had never done. She had asked them to apologize. And they had said yes. Observer Quorum's hum shifted, not to silence, to 33HZ. Nuara heard it. The elder's crystalline body vibrated with the new frequency. "What is that?" Nuara asked. Observer quorum did not have words. Only the hum, and the hum was hope. On the sunken floor, Amira finished her tea. "Here's how this works," she said, addressing the entire chamber now, not just the Vorn, all 847 species. "We build the shields, we train your engineers, we retrofit your colony worlds. It takes 11 years, maybe less. Humans work fast when we have a reason." She set the cup down. "In exchange, you do three things. One, protected status for humanity, permanent. No revotes, no appeals." Thrazik's mandibles clicked. Not the submission pattern this time, just acknowledgement. Two, resource rights. Our solar system stays ours. No mining, no extraction, no accidental survey ships. Another click. Three, 47 seats on every governing body in this Concord. The same number as your colony worlds. Every time you vote, we vote. Every time you decide, we're in the room. The chamber stirred. Delegates whispered to each other. 47 seats. That was more than any minor species had ever been granted, more than some Tier 2 civilizations held. Thrazik's compound eyes reflected red. "That's," he paused, looked at his own hands, seven-fingered chitinous, trembling again. "That's more than we anticipated." Amira nodded. "That's the point. You anticipated begging. You got a trade." General Satya Khanna in the gallery had not blinked in 4 minutes. The 59-year-old strategic intelligence officer had planned for 37 possible outcomes of this session. 47 seats had been outcome 31, the one she had marked as unlikely but possible. She had not told Amira it was unlikely. She had just nodded and said, "Push for it." Now she watched Thrazik's mandibles click the acknowledgement pattern for the 3rd time. She still did not blink. Satya James Oduya whispered beside her, "You can blink now." "No," she said, "not yet." When the shields are built." James tapped his thumb against his thigh. His tell. He had been tapping it for 37 years since the first volunteer stepped into the radiation chamber. "We did it," he said. Satya shook her head. "We started it. We finish it when the last colony is safe." On the floor below, Amira reached into her jacket pocket. Not the bread this time, the photograph. Her daughter's 11th birthday. Laughing, holding a homemade radiation counter for a school science fair. She held it up not to threaten, to show. "This is why we measured," she said. "Not for power, not for revenge, for her, for the next generation, for the species that comes after us and asks, 'What did you leave us?'" She put the photograph back in her pocket. "You leave your children a dying empire. We leave ours a choice, fix it or don't. But they get to choose, that's what careful looks like." Thrazik sat down. A 12-foot chitinous arbiter, 800 years of Tier 1 supremacy. Ceremonial breastplate made from his predecessor's carapace. 47 colony worlds. A fleet of mining vessels that had stripped 12 species to near extinction. And he sat down because a 68-year-old human woman with flower on her collar had shown him a photograph of her daughter. 47 seats, he said. "The council will never agree." "The council will agree," Amira said, "because you'll tell them to, and they'll tell the Tier 2 civilizations, and they'll tell the Tier 3. And within 11 years, every species in this chamber will have seen what careful looks like." She picked up her teacup. "Or you can keep dying, your choice." The recording drone's red light pulsed. 900 billion beings watched a Vorn arbiter lower his head. Not in submission, not in defeat, in something else. Something the galaxy had never seen from a Vorn before. "Respect." "We accept," Thrazik said. "The shields, the seats, the apology." He turned to the gallery, to the Hissith delegation, to Observer Quorum, whose hum had shifted from 32HZ to 33HZ and was still climbing. "To the Hissith," he said, "for 90 years of mining, for the 12 million reduced to 12,000, for the silica tiers and the empty homeworld, we apologize." He said it in Vorn. The translation drones rendered it in every language in the Concord. Observer Quorum's hum hit 34HZ. Nuara wept silica tears. They crystallized on her shoulders, on her lap, on the floor of the gallery. She did not brush them away. 90 years, she whispered. 90 years, and I never thought I'd hear those words. Amira Voss, on the sunken floor, poured herself another cup of tea. "That's what careful sounds like," she said. The chamber did not erupt. It did not cheer. 2,341 delegates sat in silence for 11 seconds, the same silence that had followed the teacup's click at the beginning of the session. But this silence was different. The first silence had been confusion. This silence was reverence. Then one by one the 12 overlooked species in the gallery began to hum. The Hissith, the Vel, the Tikrai, the Melani, the Il, the Zan, the Orin, the S. Sathak, the Peter, the Ka, the Brinth, the Zo. Each in their own frequency. Each at their own volume. The sound filled the 217-meter chamber like a choir that had been waiting 312 years to sing. 6 months later, the brass plaques lined the corridor of the human diplomatic vessel, Quiet Needle. 11 of them, each with a name, a date, a radiation level, and a single word. Measured, Captain Elias Torres, 52 years old, 2 benign tumors removed, still carrying the radiation counter from his exposure at age 33, walked the corridor every morning. He placed his hand on each plaque, not to pray, to remember. They knew, he had told Amira the night of the session. They volunteered anyway. Now, 6 months later, he stood at the end of the corridor and watched Earth grow larger in the viewport. "We finished it," he said. Observer Quorum was on the observation deck when Amira found her. The crystalline elder stood alone, her facets catching the starlight, her subsonic hum at a steady 34 Hz. She had not stopped humming since the session. She was not sure she ever would. "May I join you?" Amira asked. Observer Quorum's facets rotated. "Yes." Amira carried a tray, 2 cups, jasmine tea, the cup with the hairline crack. She poured, handed one to the crystalline elder. "We finish things," Amira said, "even the broken ones." Observer Quorum accepted the cup. She could not drink, her crystalline body had no mouth, but she held it. The warmth transferred to her facets. She had never felt warm before. "Your daughter," Observer Quorum said. "The photograph, she measured too." Amira smiled. "She designed her first experiment at 9. Radiation levels in our basement. Found nothing. Was disappointed for a week. And now she's an engineer, building the shields." Amira took a sip of tea. "Careful, that's us." Observer Quorum looked at the hairline crack in the teacup. "You never repaired it." "No." "Why?" Amira turned the cup in her hands. The crack caught the light again. "Because it broke 19 years ago. I was going to fix it. But then I thought, everything breaks, everything cracks. The question isn't whether you can make it whole again. The question is whether you keep using it anyway." She set the cup down. "We're cracked too. Humanity, the volunteers who died. The ones who survived with tumors and radiation sickness. We're not whole, we're not pure. We're just careful." Observer Quorum's hum shifted. 35 Hz. "Careful," the elder repeated. "Yes, that's us." On the planet below, construction had begun. 47 shield generators, one for each Vorn colony world. Human engineers, Vorn labor. Hissith supervisors, Nuara had insisted, and Thrazik had agreed. The first shield would be finished in 11 months. The last in 11 years. Lei Wei, the data analyst who had spent 11 years undercover in Vorn space, stood on the surface of Vorn Prime and watched the first foundation being laid. Her Vorn-manufactured watch ticked. She did not take it off. 11 years, she said to no one. 11 years, and now we build. She smiled. James Oduya, 71 years old, radiation specialist, stood in the medical bay of the Quiet Needle and reviewed the files. 119 volunteers. 11 dead. The rest scattered across human space, living with the consequences of having walked into radiation chambers so humanity could measure what the Vorn refused to measure. He tapped his thumb against his thigh. "Was it worth it?" he asked the empty room. The answer came from the corridor. Elias Torres walking past, hand on the brass plaques. "They thought it was," Elias said. "That's enough." General Sadia Khanna finally blinked. 6 months, she had not blinked since the session. She had stared at screens, at reports, at shield construction timelines, at Vorn compliance documents, at Hissith reparation agreements. She blinked. Then she smiled. "Now we build," she said. On the observation deck, Amira poured the last of the tea. Observer Quorum's hum had settled at 35 Hz. Not anxiety, not hope, something in between, something the elder had never felt before and did not have a name for. "What do we call it?" Observer Quorum asked. "This thing we've built, this arrangement." Amira thought about it. "Call it measurement," she said. "Call it careful, call it a species that asked the question instead of assuming the answer." She picked up the photograph from her pocket. Her daughter at 11, laughing, holding the radiation counter. "Call it finished," she said, "for now." The recording drone that had transmitted the session to 900 billion beings was still active. It floated in the observation deck, its red light pulsing, recording everything. Observer Quorum noticed it. "Are you still transmitting?" she asked. The drone beeped, affirmative. "Then transmit this," Observer Quorum said. She turned to face the drone. Her crystalline facets caught the starlight. Her hum vibrated through the metal floor. "We were dying, all of us, the Vorn, the Hissith, the 12 species in the gallery. We were dying because we refused to ask the question. What kills us? What saves us? who measures. She paused. The humans measured. They measured their own weakness and our death. And they came back with bread and tea and a cracked cup and said, "We can fix this. Not because we're strong, because we're careful." Her hum hit 36 Hz. That's what victory looks like. Not conquest, construction. Amira Voss, 68 years old, grandmother of 3, former xenobiologist, stood on the observation deck and watched Earth turn below. Her daughter was down there, building shields, designing experiments, raising children who would never know a galaxy where humanity was called minor species, Category D. She reached into her jacket pocket. One slice of bread left, wrapped in wax paper. Her grandmother's starter, still alive after 85 years. She did not eat it, she held it. "Careful," she said, "that's us." Observer Quorum's facets rotated one final time. She looked at the human woman, flour still dusted on her collar, photograph in her pocket, cracked teacup in her hand, bread in her fingers, and understood. This was not a species that had won. This was a species that had measured, that had counted, that had walked into radiation chambers and died so the next generation would have a number to work with. This was a species that had looked at the Vorn ascendancy, 12 feet of chitin and 7 limbs and 800 years of supremacy, and said, "You're dying. We can fix it. Ask nicely." And the Vorn had asked. Careful, Observer Quorum said, "Yes, that's us." The words were hers now, borrowed, transformed. The way all good measurements become. 35 Hz. The hum did not stop.